One Piece 1007 plus, Kozuki Oden is definitely dead. Onimaru been to Onigashima? Zoro changed his sword? Hello 500 brothers, welcome back to Top Manga. On the latest chapter 1007, Oda had a hard hug, just as stated, whatever YouTubers say, I will do the opposite. When we were busy speculating about the mysterious shadow in chapter 1004, which is Hyori, Enel, Kanjuro or even Toki, Shanks, all of a sudden Oda let an unexpected character appear, which is Kozuki Oden. Oden's return shocked the 9 gods, they could not believe their eyes. When the venerable princess, presumably dead 20 years ago, appeared again in the flesh and bones of her eyes. But this will unintentionally turn things upside down in the One Piece world. What is Oda planning on giving Oden back? Let's first try to see the implications of this. It is true that Kaido and Big Mom are out of the power of both one of the 4 Emperor, not to mention 5 supernovas, there must be more powerful characters to help us Luffy. However, is that person Oden appropriate? With the same thing as 20 years ago, he never won Kaido, who has grown a lot, not to mention Big Mom. In addition, Momonosuke is being built to become a new shogun, the resurrection of the boy's father, will make its role which is not prominent, completely disappear. Not to mention, Enma was given to Zoro, but if Oden went to war, the mastery was of course, Z was cut off, without a sword. Finally, a word that Oden himself said before parting ways with the gods, I want you, let me open the door of the kingdom of Wano in my stead. It was he who entrusted it with trusting them, now reviving, or the fact that Oden was not dead, would destroy a glorious flashback of the greatest samurai in Wano nation. We have watched a decisive battle, an execution, a glorious death of a great man. It would have completely lost its meaning, if Oden was still alive now, but Kinemon and the others had not witnessed the princess's last moment, so it was hard to avoid them believing it was true. But is that really Kozuki Oden? Today, Top Manga will join you in discussing this very hot topic. 1. Does Oden live or die? In chapter 1000, the memorable One Piece milestone, Oda revealed very important information, related to Oden's crew's diary. In 20 years, the next mighty pirate generation will lead a new era, they will reach the new world. If I die, they will be the people who will be able to bring down Kaido, wrote Oden himself. This diary Yamato picked up, and returned it to Momonosuke, while she still kept her dream of inheriting Oden. Assuming Oden was alive, we wouldn't need it anymore, but would hear him tell his story quickly. Yamato and Momonosuke, just like Zoro, was to downplay the role, and Luffy's victory was less valuable. The only person who rejoices is probably Robin, since she is no longer the only one who can read the poneglyph, not being hunted by any more. But that, with what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, will confuse One Piece. And the so-called new era, which Oda has been working hard to build, will dissolve into smoke. The new generation cannot do it, still has to let one person from the mountain come back to life, so this Wano arc will fade from now on. Everything is perfect, and Oda brought Oden back to life, it will be like the negligent death of Uchiha Madara, making a wonderful arc with a big grump. So, in my personal opinion, is that Oden did not need, and should not, be resurrected. Oda himself also said, there will be no resurrection of a dead character in One Piece, I believe it is still true. So is it that Oden is not dead, or is sent to the future by his wife? Reread chapter 972 first, Oden foresaw his death, honestly, these kinds of things will kill me today. And it is true that after 1 hour, Orokai is still flipping, Oden can only throw the plank for the gods to flee, and he stays to receive a bullet from Kaido in the head, then his body sinks into the cauldron. Kaido actually killed Oden that day, did Toki miraculously teleport people at such a great distance? Certainly not. Right after the execution, the royal family rushed to inform her, Lady Toki, we have come to announce the death of great Oden. At the last moment, people speak proudly. At that time she was too far away, completely ignorant of her husband's death, by the time she received the news, it was too late, moving a corpse to the future, does it make any sense? Furthermore, even Oden's body won't be able to get it back, because Orokai will manually check the fake. In chapter 973, he was so cowardly that he was still shaking like a civet in hot water, because Momonosuke's body could not be found and the scarlet blushed. Princess Orokai, the water is already hot. You will be burned, by the way. I told me to be cold, keep shaking. Bring me the bones of the samurai, why haven't they come back yet? With the motto of life must see people, death must see corpses, there is no way Orokai does not know whether Oden and Toki are alive or dead. He confirmed in chapter 932, Oden died right in front of me, but the son Momonosuke, still exists somewhere. Until now, that brat's body has not been discovered. The blood of the Kozuki family is still flowing inside it, and now those people are trying to revive the Kozuki family. With Orokai's insistence, I dare to let the title be that Oden is 100% dead. For 20 years, he was constantly searching for Momo, or the red sack, if a certain Oden wandered around on Wano land, it would have been discovered long ago. But the fact that Oden was dead, even his wife was told by Orokai. 20 years ago, Kozuki Oden was executed. Before his death, his wife Toki said this year is the year they revenge, this is Orokai's obsession. But through that, we know a whole lot about it, that the beast pirates in chapter 973, actually shot Lady Toki. Naturally, Orokai also personally examined the body, just like his inherent cowardice. So if both Oden and his wife are no longer alive, could Oda let his character come back to life? I think this might be a temporary one, let's say Toki has awakened the devil fruit so she can do it. Toki allows her to travel in time, but only travel to the future, unable to return to the past. The fact that Oden knew 20 years later there would be a world-changing event, was because he went to Laugh Tale, knowing all the secrets of drum history. It was absolutely not Toki who teleported him back and forth, and then back, so Oden knew. Even following his flashback on Oden, we can see that he himself said to his wife, "Are you also looking for it, Toki?" That is why she traveled about 800 years, that glorious day deviated from the earth. If that's the case, you just need to dance for another 20 years, and your dream will. Toki interrupted him, choosing to stay behind to follow her husband. As for Oden before being executed, he will reveal it to his wife, this is definitely the rule set by the Pirate King Roger, so it is always dark about One Piece or Laugh Tale. So discard the hypothesis Toki brought Oden to the future and back, but upon awakening their power, maybe their souls will exist. This critique theory is based on the jutsu that saved the soul of the fourth Haguk, into Naruto's body. Suppose Toki is able to save souls, give his souls and her husband time to meet Momonosuke, Hyori, and the Red Envelope, on the day of revenge. The character who saved the life of the Nine Red Scabbard in chapter 1004 has disappeared, possibly Toki's soul, since she only lasted for a certain time. That's why Kawamatsu said, "I vaguely see a familiar face, but it must be a dream. It can't be true." Since Lady Toki was dead, it was only in a dream that she healed them. And after Toki disappeared, it was Oden's turn to appear, but I completely did not understand what his role was, aside from the factors that encouraged our morale, and affected Kaido's mentality. But in general, this theory lacks a lot of basis, just a little imagination flying away with my Toki. As for myself, I still favor that this Oden is not real. The only one who can revive others, is Gecko Moria. If he goes to Wano Kingdom, it is true that Oden is likely to be resurrected in zombie form. In chapter 925, Blackbeard stole him into the ice, so it is unlikely he killed Moria. If Teach wants to stink, he will need Moria's knowledge of Wano, and the Kage no Mi ability is very helpful. However, if that is the case, they have to go to the island at least from chapter 996, so it would be a bit too early for Blackbeard's personality. Another case is Kanjuro, this Oden is his drawing. Kanjuro wants to help the Persimmon, after Kaido kills Orokai. But he was afraid of being chased away by Kinemon's group, so he was disguised as Oden. This theory is also plausible, but the possibility is very low, because in chapter 986, Kanjuro died under Kiku's blade. At that time, Kiku and Reizo cried a lot. Kinemon also approached Kanjuro's body, placing the hat on his face. Would he not have checked, if let Kanjuro live, who knows how he will harm our side in the future? Kinemon knows his abilities, he is the leader of the Red Envelope, so he should be very careful whatever he does. Furthermore, they had been deceived by Kanjuro's drawings once, so they had to check more carefully. After being slashed by Kiku, Kanjuro did not turn into ink like when he was beheaded by Kinemon, proving that he was a real person. So the odds of him still alive were extremely low, and the fact that Fukuro Kyujo performed his immortal reincarnation, just a funny story of his brothers, should not be put into a hypothesis. In other cases, not zombies or drawings, only the ability to disguise. The two powers we know of at this point, are the main no Mi, and the Inu no Mo, the model of the nine-tailed fox. The previous possessor of main no Mi, the sorceress Kurozumi Higurashi, was killed by Kaido. Current capacity belongs to Mr. 2 Bon Clay, but he is locked up in Impel Down, and the chance of meeting Oden before is almost zero. Like Devon, she looks old but only 36 years old, by the time Oden returns is 25 last year. Catarina Devon was only 11 years old at the time, and her chances of meeting Oden were as low as Bon Clay's. Because when Oden was adventure on the Whitebeard and Roger, Devon was only 4 or 5 years old. It was true that Blackbeard entered the ice while Oden was the captain of the 2nd Division, but Devon is the one with the power of the Nine Tails, she must see to transform, but listening to Blackbeard describes herself as not having any effect. So when analyzing chapter 1007, I dismissed all these hypotheses, just mentioning the case of the fox Onimaru. To the Onimaru fox chapter 1007 has the title Mr. Tanuki, surely the subject mentioned, is Chopper Weasel. However, the president broke Queen's mouth, and declared I must not be a weasel. But the title is related to weasels. Does Oda have a meaning? Japanese badger dogs, or Japanese weasels, are also known as Tanuki, and have been a part of Japanese folklore since ancient times. According to legend, Tanuki is often thought of as a harmful and also interesting animal, a master at disguises and changes in shape, but also very foolish and mindless. Then maybe some Tanuki disguised as Oden? And that Tanuki could be the fox Onimaru, the pet of the Ringo Lord, Shimotsuki Ushimaru. According to Kawamatsu in chapter 953, Onimaru is always with Lord Ushimaru. It's more like a god than a pet, because a fox can't beat grave thieves. The key is probably its ability. Onimaru can transform into a muscular tank, but it hides that from Kawamatsu. Maybe only Lord Shimotsuki Ushimaru knew about this, because as soon as he saw Kawamatsu, he knew Zoro and Hyori were not bad people, so he turned back into a fox and left. However, this ability is unlikely to come from the devil fruit, because Gyakamaru is not a mythical creature, just an ordinary person. While the Hito chopper has eaten, Onimaru is confirmed to be a fox. So I have to hypothesize that it can transform like a fox in Japanese legend. The form of the monk is most commonly used, when side by side with Lord Ushimaru. The name Gyakamaru is taken from Kawamatsu's fake name, but normally it is just called Onimaru. With her disguised ability, Onimaru had more than enough strength to blend into Oni Island. It turned into Lady Toki, in order to heal the red envelopes. When they woke up, they could not see. And Onimaru ran outside, returning to Oden's form. Its former owner was a warlord, so he definitely met the Oden couple. The Onimaru had contact with them so he could disguise. Kaido leveled the Ringo land again. Onimaru definitely wanted to avenge his master. So he went to Onigashima to wait for his chance. Law caught it, so he moved the red sack down to the treasury. In addition, Onimaru is holding something else, which will power Zoro. I'll talk about it in part 3. 3. Will Zoro change to a new sword? Everyone knows that Kaido has launched his hybrid form, to prepare to sell onions to 5 supernovas. But the exact shape has yet to be revealed. We will probably see a few more chapters. And to show that grandeur, it is for sure that Luffy has to eat a pot of porridge with lots of onions. So if you want it to be more epic, what more do you need? I think it's a good time to let Zoro's Sandai Kaititsu leave the game. For example, Zoro would infuse Haki with all 3 swords to block Kaido, lightning strike, or something more terrifying in his hybrid form. And then became Sandai Kaititsu, the worst rank of Zoro's 3 swords, succumbing to attack and breaking. Taking a hit from the world's most powerful creature and breaking Sandai is nothing to be ashamed of. ZS Haki is obviously weaker than Kaido. Fans are crazy about the theory of future number 1 swordsmen, and if they break their sword, they won't convince anyone. It is no coincidence that the masters of swordsmanship have their own great treasures, or great treasured swords. The inferior Haki might not have broken, since it was a good sword. For example, ZS lepers were all cut down by Mihawk, but Wado Ikemonji didn't cut anything. Likewise, if Shanks and Mihawk cross swords, let's say Haki is equal, but Shanks uses a slap, Mihawk holds Yoru, the red-haired sword will break first. Because of a low-quality sword, it would be impossible to bear too much Haki, too strong a master infused, let alone a collision with equally strong Haki. So, with his current strength, Zoro has been smashed by Kaido with Sandai Kaititsu, no need to be ashamed. On the contrary, it also gives him a chance to grow stronger. At that time, Zoro had only 2 billion Argentine pesos left. Wado Ikemonji and Enma, how to fight Kaido? The answer lies in the character I said above, the fox Onimaru. It was it that took Zoro's Shusui, he was going to find it to get it back. Then Hyori said that if he gave up Shusui, he would exchange him Enma. But if there is an emergency, without a sword, it is impossible to fight. Onimaru will hand over the Shusui. With 3 great swords in hand, Zoro will develop greater strength, enough to deal with the 4 Emperor. Or maybe it would be Nidai Kaititsu, the great treasure sword higher than Sandai Kaititsu, and Zoro wanted to try it in the first place. It also makes sense to replace Sandai with Nidai, as it ranks in the same league as Enma and Wado. Zoro will have 3 great treasures. Regarding the handing of the sword to Zoro by the Renders Tengu Yamahotetsu, it is possible that after moving Devil Island to the Flower Capital, the battlefield will be changed. Hotetsu sees the battle and realizes the Zoro sword is broken and hands him the new sword. Because one bar is cut off, will make the power of the move less powerful. On the contrary, if a single bar is the ultimate treasure of a superior sword, it will also lose balance. So Zoro will have 3 of the same rank, either receive Shusui from Onimaru, or be given a Nidai Kaititsu by Mr. Hotetsu. I make this hypothesis, partly because I am also a fan of Z, but not crazy in the style of the future number 1 swordsman in the future. You must not break your sword. The sword is an insult to Z fighting against the world's most powerful pirate. Not dead is luck. Breaking the weakest sword is nothing to humiliate. What I want to see, is that Zoro will inflict a new scar on Kaido, not cut into the old scar like a red scar. That was the most vulnerable position on his body, cutting it was the best way. But if Zip uses 3 slashes, but 2 creates large scars, 1 stick only causes scratches, obviously a farce, only eating after Oden. In order to slash Kaido, in addition to high-level haki and fusion with swords, 3 swords of the same rank are required. At that time, Zoro will unleash the slash at the exact spot of the scar, but his 3 swords will also inflict new wounds. 3 fatal cuts, as deep as Oden, would be a measure of Zoro's performance, when comparing wounds. Only then would Kaido fall, and of course, before Kaido was cut, he would break Zoro's sword before he could change his sword. Those are analysis, the same hypothesis based on his personal opinion. If you find it good, please leave the likes, share, and 1 channel registration to support top manga. Goodbye and see you again. Yeah.